Thank you for listening to Footnotes, a Fellowship Mosaic podcast. This is a space for us to dig deeper into Scripture, what is happening in our community and culture, and continue the conversations we start on Saturday nights. We are excited to have you join us as we pursue truth, holiness, and redemption together.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Footnotes. I'm Nick Roland, and I'm here with my good friend Matt Noetzel.
Take two, that's right, we're here.
Take one didn't go so well. Nick forgot to hit the button. So, we're going again. Hey, this upcoming Saturday, we are starting our season of Advent. And it's something that is we do every year at our church. And when you look at our preaching calendar, like we have a calendar for everything we're going to cover in the year. And in some ways, it looks kind of surprising because for 11 months, for the most part, we're preaching books of the Bible. And we take 1 month every year to break that rhythm. And in some ways, it feels kind of surprising. It's a different thing for us. But actually, only doing the month of Advent is kind of the surprising thing for a lot of people in church history. Because for most of church history, they actually built their whole year around a certain kind of calendar. So, Nate, tell us about it. What was that calendar all about?
Yeah, so we got a liturgical year that for 21st century Christians feels like it starts around Christmas as we anticipate the birth of Christ. But in the history of the church, this is actually the last of the celebrations to get added in. And the first was the Easter celebration, the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so it is, interesting that we put so much weight and emphasis on this, the celebration that took a long time for the church to finally come around on. And we do it by a variety of symbols and rhythms. We set aside this 4 Sundays coming into the day of Christmas morning, to attempt to slow down and to recall that Jesus came once and he's coming again. And so the word Advent actually means coming or waiting. It's kind of it has plays in both directions, and so it's not just that we're celebrating his coming, but we're also celebrating this literal 4-week span of waiting, of making ourselves aware that he came and he's coming again, and we are in that already and not yet space of waiting even today. And so that's the back of the napkin pitch on Advent.
And when we think about when I think about that whole idea of you use the term liturgical year.
Sure.
That's an idea that goes all the way back to Israel, really, and even today in a religious world, we have to organize time. This is really tragic example, but I was reading about hostages coming out of Palestine, mm-hmm. and one of the kids they interviewed who had been there 50 days thought they had been there a year.
Yeah. When
they were underground and had nothing to measure time by. That's one of the most heartbreaking, difficult things. We as humans need to organize time. We need to have markers to walk through. And I remember me being a kid, growing up, I organized time around my year around time off school. Everything in my life was basically, when am I not in school? So my weeks were organized around Saturday and Sunday, because that's my time not to be in school.
Yeah.
My day was organized into when do I get out of school. And my year was organized around holidays. And so I wanted to try to make it to Labor Day and to Thanksgiving, to Christmas, to spring break, and to the summer.
Yeah.
Because that was everything about my year was, how do I get out of school?
Yeah.
And the early church, they had seen this happen in Israel, where Israel did the same thing. They organized their week around Sabbath, and they organized their year around festivals of Passover and Pentecost and these important festivals. And the early church said, man, we need to do that too. We need to organize our year around Jesus.
Yeah.
And so they built this calendar of the year to focus their entire year around the person of Jesus. And so that was a big part of the practice of growing up. Even if you think about what it would be like, we maybe, I think, have lost sense of this a lot, but what would it be like if you grew up measuring time by the life of Jesus? That you remembered, this event in my life happened around Epiphany when we celebrate the coming of the wise men. Oh, this event in my life happened around Easter. Like if that was your way of measuring time. And that's what the church was really after, was organizing their thought life around Jesus.
That's good. You I think have stepped backward into a conversation on time, and I'm resisting every urge to take it into all of the kind of Ecclesiastes ponderings on time, musings on time. But there is something about the way that we attempt to live like time is eternal on this side of death, and for us it is not. And so it is. I'm grateful for the falling of leaves and the dropping of temperature to mark the changing of a season again. And though it feels like it comes around so often, I can't believe it's Christmas again already. I'll get 70 or 80 or 90 if I'm lucky and healthy and break the Noetzel family tradition of passing in our 80s. So I just don't get that many Advent seasons. No. And so there's a deep need to turn my heart away from the toil and turn my heart away from the time blindness and make myself anchor here just for a moment and remember that I am that there is a part of me that is eternal, that I will be resurrected someday, and I hope that day is any day now. But as he tarries, we get to spend this a little bit of time once a year, remembering that he stepped down into it all in the most humble of ways. A little baby, a floppy little guy, and that's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
So
you use that phrase, Christmas comes around again, and I think that circular idea of around is really interesting with Advent. Because the way it's arranged, we are it's really cool because in Advent we are both thinking about awaiting Jesus' first coming, but we're also emphasizing that we await his second coming. So it really does make it such that the Advent or the liturgical year creates a circle where you begin Jesus' life on Christmas Day in our thinking about his life, and we go through the year, and in some ways when we hit the beginning of Advent, that in some ways that's the end of we're looking forward to Jesus' return. And so there's something I think really strategically put there of, even though Advent we think of as heading toward Christmas, there's something it's trying to teach us that what they were expecting and waiting for Messiah, we're still in that place of waiting for Messiah.
That's good. And
they're hoping to create that sense of anticipation. What are the things that we do in Advent to create that anticipation feeling?
One of the big symbols that we come back to time and again is a literal circle. It's a wreath, which in researching about it, apparently it was a Lutheran minister in like the 1800s was tired of the children asking time and again, how close are we to Christmas? And so originally it was a series of 6 small red candles and a big white candle, and he had enough lined up that the kids could see each day as he lit a candle how many days left, and so he didn't have to keep answering. And we've simplified it, and so just the big candles remain, and they've each of them taken on a deeper meaning as you, but they stand in for the 4 kind of big ideas of hope and peace and joy and love. And the final 5th candle that sits in the center is the Christ candle that gets lit Christmas morn. You start with just a single candle lit, and you start in utter darkness, and you light the first candle, and it's a season of brightening as we await the coming of the light, and it stays lit through into the liturgical calendar, into the new year, through till almost Easter morn. But Good Friday is extinguished as we remember Christ's life being extinguished. And so there's some deep kind of rich symbolism to turn our minds and our hearts back to something going on there. And I know that there are that culture at large has a lot of decor and symbols and traditions, and we have our films and our common decorations and our common meals and things. And some of those, sorry about that. Some of those surely can turn our minds and our hearts toward heavenly things, and some maybe don't, or maybe turn our eyes toward other things. And so it's a consideration, at least, as you look around. What are the things in your life in this season? What are the physical, tangible items that you can put around you to remind you, or what are the little celebrations that you can do to stay grounded in this season of waiting and anticipating? And maybe it's deciding not to set up something or not to attend a thing. I'm thinking about we used to thank our volunteers around Christmas time every year, and this year we're moving it to January when it's not such a crowded month, and we're combining it with another thing we need to do. And so we're just kind of like, let's try to free up the calendar. My calendar's full of obligations for kids and for job and for celebrating with lots of different groups of people. And so what can we do to put those things aside as we are able? And so that was just in scheduling a tangible thing to say, let's not do that and care for you just by giving you another free night in this busy season. So
that idea of creating anticipation and even delaying gratification, I think, is such an important part of Advent. I was reading a devotional by a priest named Fleming Rutledge, who I've grown to admire her and learn a lot from her. And she has an Advent Christmas devotional that's really, it's essentially an intro and a conclusion with several years of her Christmas sermons, and they're wonderful. And she referred to Christmas creep. And she said that Christmas is slowly creeping out of December 25th and consuming more and more of the month. And what she meant by that was a big part of what Advent used to be was creating this sense of expectation. Like we're waiting for the idea of the coming. We're feeling this anticipation. And she said increasingly the desire to celebrate Christmas for a whole month is removing the sense of anticipation. And as I was reading that idea of like creating anticipation, I was just thinking about how particularly relevant for our culture that idea is of making yourself wait for something, in a culture that is increasingly used to having everything right now at our fingertips the moment we want it, that there is actually a spiritual discipline in making yourself wait. And that's a pretty powerful concept. And even I was thinking about this whole idea of time and rhythm. There used to be rhythms to our day around the sunrise and the sunset. And when the sun went down, your activities were severely limited. And we've created electronic light bulbs that are awesome and really great, but they've enabled us to war against some of those things that used to slow us down. And so I love that idea of like, what would it look like in the Advent season instead of filling it with every celebration, which is beautiful and wonderful and good. I'm not trying to like be a Scrooge on your Christmas parties, but what would it look like to create some time and some space to anticipate and to wait? I think it's a pretty beautiful idea. What else can families and individuals be doing in this season to kind of mark the moment and take some things in?
Yeah. I was listening to another fellowship podcast, the Sermon Notes podcast that the Fayetteville team puts out. And they had one out last year, and Clark was processing a little bit that he had read an article in Gospel Coalitions, and I don't recall who he was quoting, so sorry for that. But he was saying that because it's such a season of trying to rehearse and prepare for the waiting, just to stay in that, he said, you wait all the time throughout the day. You're waiting in line, you're waiting in traffic, you're waiting here, you're waiting there, waiting for a meeting to start. Instead of cramming into those spaces momentary distraction on your phone or disengagement through something else, maybe actually try to rehearse thankfulness or awareness of waiting. Actually use the waiting to remind you that you're waiting, and that feels profound. So I want to turn on that one a little bit this year.
And ultimately, like that idea of reminding us that we're waiting is an exercise in hope, because when you know that there is something good coming after the waiting, it can turn the waiting into something like anticipation or excitement. But if you're in a season of darkness, a season of difficulty, and there's no sense of waiting, that there's something coming, the darkness can become crushing. And that's one of the marks of Christian faith is, I remember Tim Keller writing about this in his book, Walking with God Through Pain and Suffering, is Christians have shown themselves ridiculously resilient to suffering. It doesn't mean suffering doesn't hurt or it goes away, but this concept that there is an end to suffering when Christ returns and makes all things right and all things good is one of the most powerful resources we have for dealing with the difficulties of everyday life. And so like flexing those waiting muscles, like that ability to like remind ourselves, oh, right, this red light will come to an end and it'll turn green and I can sit and wait, is like this little mini picture of the entire Christian life, that this momentary absence of physically Christ with us making things right will come to an end.
It's really good. Even the weightier things of this illness will come to an end,
Yep.
This depression will come to an end, this loneliness or isolation will come to an end, this marital strife or season of a child running away. All of those things come to an end. And so
I heard one counselor say that the most back-breaking thought for any struggle is, this will never end. That is that is when people get to that place of despair, is one of the hardest things to get people through. And so that makes one of the most powerful thoughts, this will come to an end. Like this too shall pass. And it's one of the beautiful things that we get to remind ourselves of at the Advent season, as we remember what it was like for Israel to wait for their Savior, O come Emmanuel, that we too are waiting for a Savior to come. Any final thoughts, Mr. Noetzel?
I don't think so. I feel pushed into a space of contemplation, I guess. I don't have a good answer there. Just we've been waiting a long time, and saints for the last 2 millennia have been waiting, and we join them. And I hope it's a season for me and for y'all as well of our hearts being turned toward come again, Lord. Make it right. It's not how it should be, and so make it right.
Well, that's our goal. So for this Advent season Mosaic, we're going to be spending times in our worship gatherings and in small groups, just practicing that discipline and really looking forward to Christmas Day when we celebrate that Christ has come and God is with us and he will come again. Hey, thanks for listening to Footnotes. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.